So hello and thank you for joining us. I've got about 20 minutes to talk to you about enabling service as a driver of brand experience and the importance of that and how it's played out in my career with a brand called John Lewis that many of you will know that I used to work for. In fact, I spent 28 years there before I started my own business as a consultant. This quote came in my LinkedIn feed probably 2 years ago, and I thought it really typified the challenges of enabling service as a direct driver of brand experience. Because being a love brand isn't rocket science. It is very easy. You just have to be lovely to your customers and your people all the time. But it's the end bit that really caught my attention. It's simple, but it's not easy. The starting point for this is decide who you are and what you want to be and whether you're going to offer a service or an experience. And my definition of those words is really summed up by the two brands, one of which you'll definitely recognise, McDonald's. The other one you may not. It's the Rainforest Cafe. They've got branches in most countries in the world, but usually only one or two. And they both sell burgers. They're both identical businesses in terms of their core proposition. They sell you a burger, but very, very different in terms of what they do. McDonald's, very process-driven, high volume, fast food, very successful. I'm not criticising them in any way for that. But the Rainforest Cafe is a very different proposition with a premium product, and is very experiential in that the servers will make a real fuss of you and make your meal an event, because a lot of people use it for birthdays and celebrations. And those two businesses have a really clear idea of who they are and what they stand for, and having that at the outset, having a why, having a mission, and having everybody aligned to that is really important. And one of the questions I'm asked a lot recently is, where do I think service will be in the next 5 years? You'll either be fabulous at self-service and process, so you're a go-to for your customers because you're so easy to deal with, or for those who want the kind of human affirmation and an experiential visit or meal or shopping experience, whatever it might be, you'll be in the Rainforest Cafe Park. So that's really important, just for context, to be clear about who you are and what you stand for and how you play out your proposition. And if that's not complicated enough, we've suddenly got change. Change is just a constant in business these days, and is really challenging. And just when you think you've got a handle on things, the pandemic struck, which caused more change in a shorter space of time than perhaps anything we've seen in our lifetime. Businesses started to react in quite an interesting way. And I think one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is a requirement or a perceived need for businesses to have a more human face. Amazon, you may recall, did some TV advertising post first lockdown in the UK, in which case they just thanked their employees who were working in warehouses and drivers around the country for supporting the business and for supporting the business's customers. And I found that fascinating, because Amazon, for me, have always been a kind of process-driven business where the people will be part of the process rather than being an asset in their own right. So to see them recognising their people publicly and spending money advertising doing that was fascinating. All other businesses are doing it too in the UK. Halifax Building Society, British Airways, the train companies are doing it, very much about connecting people and bringing them together. And I think that's going to be a real theme that we're going to see. So how do you make all this work? Well, this model is something that I used at John Lewis to get our personality right and to get our brand right. And the customer experience, basically, you talk about it in terms of 4 things. There's the product or service that you sell. That's really important to be good value for your customers, your target customers. It doesn't have to be the best in its category, but it's great if it is. The process by which you sell it. So how easy are you to do business with? This is about doing what you say you'll do when you say you're going to do it, and building trust in that sense. And good process design can satisfy up to 90% of customers, I tend to find, if it's really well thought through and really meticulously executed. Channel, my comment on channel really is to say, I've seen some great digital strategies with businesses, and I'm a big fan, I'm a real big supporter of that. But make sure you're taking your customers with you, because I've seen some businesses actually taking a digital strategy forward before their customers are quite ready for it yet. So having the right channels for your customers at the right time is really important. And then engagement, the bit that John Lewis, my old employee, used to be famous for. What did it feel like? What did the people make you feel like? And what memory do you take away of the business? And that's particularly important when you've had the human interaction either on the phone or even tone of email if you're responding directly to a customer rather than it being an automated response. And the relative volume of those 4 elements relative to each other will to start to determine the personality of your brand. So what is customer engagement? Well, my definition is on this slide. I wrote it when I was at John Lewis. Why? Because all the CIPD definitions and stuff I could find on Google had the consistently word missing. And for me, the consistently word in the middle of that slide is the most important one. Every business I work with has got really good, super people I come across in most businesses, but are they all as good as the best people every day, every week, every month, every year? And that's the real challenge here, to make sure that you've got that's the high standard being met every time, to reaffirm it with customers who've dealt with you before and engage customers that are dealing with you for the first time. So before you can engage with your customers, you need to have really engaged employees who are proud of the brand they work for, who want to be there, who want to do their best for the brand and its customers. And there are 6 things to achieving that. The first thing is decide what sort of personality you have as a business, what you want to be known for. So think about, if your organization was an individual person, what sort of behavior and attitude would you want to be known for? So friendly, kind, thoughtful. And that just gives some kind of North Star to your people for, this is the behavior we want. It's not about giving them scripts. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think it's a terrible thing to do. But it's a matter of giving them a kind of brand reference in terms of how they might behave. If you're going to be friendly, thoughtful and kind, or whatever you decide you want to be, you need to measure it. Otherwise, it's just an aspiration. So the measurement is really important. And that's measuring it inside with employee surveys. So do I work with colleagues who are friendly, thoughtful and kind? And measuring it externally with customers. Did you find us friendly, thoughtful and kind? And you can be as blunt and as direct as that in this measurement to find out that you're actually delivering the definition that you aspire for. Communication is really important here as well, in terms of talking about it, not just as its inception, but talking about it consistently to keep it alive and keep it running in the business. So the left-hand side of that slide talks about how to set up your stall. The right hand is how to grow it and maintain it. And the leadership of this is so critical in terms of the leaders of the organization modeling the behavior and attitude they expect to see, but also finding time to coach it in others. And that's one of the gaps that I see significantly in most businesses, actually globally. I was working in the Far East for 6 months a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and I thought that would be very different. And it was the same challenges, interestingly, as we have here in the UK, in terms of leaders not finding time to coach and mentor enough. And then reward, recognition and appraisal, making sure people are talked to and appraised and rewarded for not just the outcomes they achieve, but the way they achieve the outcomes and the alignment with the brand definition. And then finally, if you've done all that really well, you've produced a perfect blueprint for the sort of person that you want to recruit into your business when you get a vacancy. So simple stuff, but as I say, it's the rigor by which it's applied where people fall down often. They'll put some of the framework in place, but then not maintain it. And it's the relentless focus that really wins here. So how did that play out in John Lewis? Well, the slide here with Great Place to Work and Great Place to Shop is Principles 1 and 2 that the founder wrote in 1929. And I think in 1929, it was remarkable. The first thing he wrote about running the business was the ultimate purpose is the happiness of all of its members. Members in this context being employees. And there's a lot of businesses I work with these days that can't get their heads around that, this idea of employee first and then customer. But it really does work. If there's any secret to anything John Lewis did, it's having that focus on employee happiness before you worry about customers. Branson talks about it as well in Virgin Group, that if you have happy employees, they'll create happy customers for you. But it must be within a sustainable business. And how do you have a sustainable retail business? Well, it's about service and value and trust, which is the second principle that he wrote about. Within the context of that, one of the slogans that came out of a customer service conference when I was at John Lewis was do what you think is right. And the ambiguity of that slightly frightened people to start with, because they said, oh, people are going to go mad and they're going to do strange things and they're going to do too much and they're going to cost us a lot of money. And I said, well, if we really feel that way, why have we got these people on our shop floors and in our call centres? In fact, it was absolutely the opposite. One of the challenges I had with that, of empowerment, if you like, the ultimate empowerment, was people being a little bit nervous of it. So what we then did was reissued the instruction and said, you can do what you think is right for a customer in terms of a complaint, up to £1,000 without talking to a manager. And interestingly, just putting that bracket of £1,000 on there just gave them a framework again, a huge framework. Obviously, very few complaints would require £1,000 to settle them. It just gave them a huge bracket and framework to work with, and it gave them the confidence to make those decisions. The other thing that was instrumental in making that work within the business was having managers available to coach and support and talk to people as they came across situations where they needed to do what they thought was right. Because initially they just wanted to double check with the manager that what they were doing was acceptable. And there were some amazing things came out of it. It really changed the business significantly. So the Are Your People a Good Experience was aimed at managers in John Lewis, and it was twofold. It was this inside out thing again, that it was Are Your People a Good Experience for each other? So employee survey, which was segmented down to departmental level. And then Are Your People a Good Experience for your customers, which was done by customer surveys and telephone surveys, and again segmented to department level. So for each department, we could tell what was the atmosphere in terms of the culture inside the team and what were they delivering for customers. And guess what? It wasn't a perfect correlation, things never are. But we discovered that in 90% of the cases, if you had a really great, happy team, you had really happy customers. We did see a very strong correlation there. A few bits with customers just to finish off with. These were some customer comments from John Lewis, Oxford Street, just before I left John Lewis in 2008. And I split them into two sections, really. One is about the process. So this slide on tangible comments. This is about the process of the nuts and bolts of the business. So I shop here for everything they would. There were 350,000 products in the department store. The store where staff are knowledgeable, all that was processed in terms of training people on the products they sold. Helpful and have time for you was staffing logistics, the right people, right place at the right time. So these are important and they build trust. But these slides, the intangible ones, are about how we make people feel. So this is what gave the competitive advantage significance to John Lewis at the time, that people wanted to come back. If you take some of those out of context, I feel at home, I've known you all my life. You'd think they were talking about a family friend or a relative, not a £2.6 billion department store group at the time. So that's where the advantage of this comes in terms of the commercial benefit. It's not for those 80-90% of people with a digital transaction who self-serve and enjoy the ease and skill with which the process has been designed for that. It's those people who require some advice or complaint settling, and then they're really wrapped up and looked after and made to feel special at the end of that process. That leaves the driver brand experience. I'll just leave you with one final comment from a customer. This was a genuine comment from the same focus group. It was lovely of us to say this, but I don't think we'd actually let her have done it. I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much indeed.